Anna Clyne is a composer of acoustic and electroacoustic music. Her work often includes collaborations with cutting-edge composers, visual artists, filmmakers, and musicians worldwide. Clyne was named the 8th most performed contemporary composer in the world and the most performed living female British composer in 2022. Clyne has been commissioned and presented by the world's most dynamic and revered arts institutions, and her music has opened such events as the Edinburgh International Festival, the last night of the Proms, and the New York Philharmonic's 2021-2022 season. This midnight hour was first performed in 2015 by the Orchestra Nationale d'Île-de-France. The composer said this about her work: "The opening to this midnight hour is inspired by the character and power of the lower strings of l'Orchestre National d'Île-de-France. From here, it draws inspiration from 2 poems, one by Charles Baudelaire and another by Juan Ramón Jiménez. While it is not intended to depict a specific narrative, her intention is that it will evoke a visual journey for the listener." Jiménez's poem is very short and concise. Here is a translation by Robert Bly. "Music, a naked woman running mad through the pure night." This immediately struck Anna Clyne as a strong image and one that she chose to interpret with outbursts of frenetic energy. For example, dividing the strings into subgroups that play fortissimo, staggered descending cascade figures from left to right in stereo effect. This stems from her early explorations of electroacoustic music. There is also a lot of evocative sensory image in Baudelaire's Harmonie du Soir. The first stanza, translated by William Adgeler, goes like this: "The season is at hand when, swaying on its stem, every flower exhales perfume like a censer. Sounds and perfumes turn in the evening air, melancholy waltz and languid vertigo." Anna Clyne riffed on the idea of the melancholy waltz about halfway into this midnight hour. She split the viola section in 2 and has one half playing at written pitch and the other half playing a quarter tone sharp to emulate the sonority of an accordion playing a Parisian-esque waltz. One of the complaints leveled against Ravel's music is that it lacks sentiment. In spite of all the brilliant writing, the sensuous tone color, the exotic melodies, the music misses heartfelt emotion. "I am Basque," Ravel admitted, "and while the Basques feel deeply, they seldom show it, and then only to a very few." Here is his forthright confession about what he felt his piano concerto should really be about. "The music of a concerto should, in my opinion, be light-hearted and brilliant, and not aim at profundity or at dramatic effects. It has been said of certain classics that their concertos were written not for, but against the piano. I heartily agree. I had intended to title this concerto Divertissement. Then it occurred to me that there was no need to do so because the title Concerto should be sufficiently clear." Ravel started work on a piano concerto for himself in preparation for a tour to the United States. Paul Wittgenstein, the great pianist who lost his right arm during the Great War, interrupted him with a request to write a concerto for the left hand only. Ravel was intrigued by the idea, and so he set to work on both concertos. It was an interesting experiment to conceive and to realize simultaneously the 2 concertos, Ravel conceded. He finished the left-hand concerto first and the 2-hand concerto about a year later. But by then, Ravel was too ill to perform it. "The concerto is nearly finished, and I am not far from being so myself," he said. The piano concerto in G major premiered with Marguerite Long performing and Ravel conducting. Ravel claimed that this piano concerto is a concerto in the most exact sense of the term and is written in the spirit of Mozart and Saint-Saëns. It includes some elements borrowed from jazz, but only in moderation. The 3 movements of the concerto do follow the standard template that Mozart developed. The first and third movements both have contrasting themes with the central development section. There is the requisite solo cadenza for the piano in the first movement. The second movement is a beautiful thing, full of sentiment, that Ravel admits was composed with the help of Mozart's clarinet quintet. In terms of highlighting brilliant and facile piano technique, this concerto does resemble those of Mozart and Saint-Saëns, but there the resemblance ends. Mozart probably would not have started his concertos with a whip crack. The smears of the trombone and the shrieks of the tiny piccolo clarinet belong to the nightclub, not the salons of Saint-Saëns. All the blue notes and jazzy rhythms seem more a tip of the hat to George Gershwin than to Mozart. The raucous good time that everybody has is just plain fun. During the 19th century, there were essentially two camps of thought about the purpose and potential of music. The revolutionaries of the century, Wagner, Liszt, Richard Strauss, and their followers, felt that music was powerfully descriptive. Wagner insisted that he could describe the droop of a hat with music. Strauss spent a good part of his career writing symphonic tone poems that described the exploits of the womanizer Don Juan, the practical jokes of Till Eulenspiegel, the adventures of Don Quixote, and even a hike up a mountain in his Alpine symphonies. Brahms would have none of this. While music was powerful in its emotional content, it was far more abstract than descriptive. Brahms wrote sonatas, concertos, and symphonies without those descriptive titles. Interestingly, both parties insisted they were merely continuing on the path of that great musical revolutionary, Ludwig van Beethoven. Brahms did most of his serious composing in the summer, away from Vienna, at some sort of resort or spa. He spent the rest of the year revising the works of those creative months. He worked on his Fourth Symphony during the summers of 1884 and 1885 at Mürzschlag in Austria. It received almost instant public admiration at its premiere in October of 1885 and has gained the same sort of stature in the symphonic repertoire as other composers' last symphonies, like Mozart's Jupiter or Beethoven's Ninth and Schubert's Great. For his symphonies, Brahms always worked within already established former plans. The first movement is in a standard sonata allegro form. Here, the exposition presents two main themes at two different pitch levels. The tentative melody played by the violins right at the start, and the heroic one played by the cellos soon after. The development works through those two themes, and then the recapitulation brings back the original material, ever so hesitatingly at first, but this time all in the same key. That is the dry, academic plan of the first movement, but the thrill comes in listening to the dramatic tension of the themes and luxuriating in Brahms' lush use of the orchestra. The second movement has two main melodies as well. The first is the beautiful horn melody right at the beginning. The cellos get the second tune again. In this movement, Brahms varies the themes ever so slightly each time he repeats them. Brahms breaks with tradition for the third movement. Normally, this is a light-hearted dance-like movement, a scherzo with a 3-beat rhythm. Not here. Here it has a 2-beat rhythm, more like a rollicking march. For the final movement, Brahms plays tribute to an old and revered form called the passacaglia, a type of theme and variations. Here, the theme is a series of 8 chords, and there are 30 variations. Brahms divided them into 3 parts. The first set constantly builds in intensity, while the second is gentle and peaceful. The third set begins just like the first, except that this time it builds to a powerful conclusion.